Welcome to the Lake Central School Board meeting for Monday, June 3rd, 2019. If you could please join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. There is a sign-up sheet in the back of the room if you would like to make a comment during our school board meeting. Moving on to our agenda, approvals, deletions, and additions. Dr. Brockman.
Thank you, Mr. Paxo. You do have some revisions before you under Roman numeral 5, the regular meeting minutes from last time. You've got a revision under Terry's Roman numeral 7B1 and B3, and Roman numeral 7D1.
All right, before I call order.
Well, let me add one thing. I was going to do it at my section, but I also am going to ask the board to table my Roman numeral 7A3 to a future meeting.
So moved.
We have a motion from Dr. Malco. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a second from Mr. Marshall. I'll give you guys a few seconds to look through the paperwork.
That'd be great, thanks.
If there's any comments or questions.
I have none.
Okay. No?
Thank you, I'm done.
Okay. Let's take a vote then. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Would there be any correspondence, Ms. Suze?
There is none.
Thank you. Moving on to our liaison committee updates. I'll start with Mr. Marshall.
Yes, the Westlake held their joint managing board meeting on May the 22nd with Schooltown of Munster, and that has ended officially at this point. I was going to defer to the director, who is not in attendance. Possibly Dr. Roman can tell us when the next official Westlake meeting may be held. I have no knowledge of that at this point. And in terms of the personnel interview committee, we have not met, and I have no report to make in that area.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Marshall. Dr. Malco?
Lake Central Education Foundation meets next week, and I have nothing to report on legislative.
All right, thank you. Ms. Suze?
No, I have nothing for my committees.
Okay. And my meetings are next week, starting next week for Dyer Parks Department and Dyer Redevelopment Committee. So I'll be able to report on that at the second meeting we have in June. Moving on to our official school board business topics, our consent agenda. Dr. Bracco.
Yeah, seek board approval for the revised minutes at your station, as well as the payroll and extracurricular expenditures and claims you received last week.
Move to approve.
We have a motion for Ms. Suze.
Second.
We have a second for Mr. Marshall. Any comments or questions regarding that consent agenda? All right, hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Now we're looking for any public comments regarding our action items,
Jeannie says no.
and there are none. So we'll move on to our official school board business topics for this evening, our regular agenda. Dr. Bracco.
All right, once again, we are blessed to have the Centralettes and their coach, Kevin Mathis, with us tonight. So if we could reconvene in front, we'll ask Kevin to come forward and talk to us about the highlights from this year's team.
Go ahead.
Good evening.
especially the first nice week we've had. No, that's exactly right. Yeah.
So if we should go from out working, they come.
That's a great comment. About the exceptions. 30 years, I think. Look at there.
Wow.
He looks great.
What a leader. This is very nice.
Give them like one more minute to get out.
Yeah.
Very nice.
I want to know if
Mr.
we made the mistake. Or did we list the names on the wrong list?
Oh, on the wrong list.
I don't like that kind of stuff.
Appreciation of your contributions and equipment. No?
It's green. Chop it.
Are these testing?
Some interesting to hear about this.
All right, we're done with our recognitions. We'll jump into the second part. Dr. Veracco.
Thank you again. My second item is to give the board an update on my participation in the State Music Association Executive Board. And to refresh everyone's memory, ISMA is the independent organization that supports music competition in our state. They operate on a $2 million annual budget. So you can imagine what they have to do to fundraise, to manage that, and to maintain cash reserves of nearly $1 million, because a lot of their events, especially marching band, is dependent upon weather to make revenue. The state board on which I participate regularly reviews and amends contest rules for marching band, solo, and ensemble. And so each year we have 4 meetings a year, 2 local that are about a week and a half before the semi-annual meeting down at the ISMA office in Indianapolis. And so we have a local group that consists of anybody who wants to come, and then there are 3 band directors and 1 administrator, who is me, who then go down to the state board to share the concerns of their local people, their zone, if you will, not just their personal concerns, but share the concerns of their zone with the state. So to get to the state meeting, because that's where the rubber really hits the road, we did revisit some of the same topics we talked about in the fall, which, as you can imagine, an organization such as this would have ongoing topics. One of the major discussions at the state meeting this year related to marching band, as you can also imagine, and it was the on-field judge. So the on-field judge is the one who, if you've been to a competition, you see them knifing through the performers. They're checking mainly for to ensure that the marchers are playing, that they're not just marching, that they're actually playing their instruments, and they check for sound quality from that vantage point. The problem is that some of those judges, according to the directors, are more aggressive and are maybe a little more nimble, and they're able to get a little deeper into the formation. But it's becoming more difficult for all of them as the performances have become more complex and less predictable, which I love that term, less predictable, meaning in order to be visually appealing from the stands, the bands are doing more creative things on the field. They talked about having a second judge up in the booth to judge sound quality. They've talked about having that judge just on the sideline walking back and forth, but then they're only catching the front couple of rows. So it's an ongoing problem for them, but not a terrible problem, I guess. The other thing that they really spent a lot of time discussing, which I suspect happens in regional coaching meetings and statewide coaching meetings as well, are inconsistencies in judging. And so some of the people who were at the statewide meeting were interested in trying to figure out how statistically to minimize what they deemed were outliers in terms of judges. So if 2 scores are at the higher end and one judge scores it lower, that judge had some kind of bias, which I would argue all judges have bias, but they want to try to minimize how that third judge reduces the score. Of course, the ISMA, personnel said what I was thinking, that, well, the two who rated it higher might be the outliers. They may not be following the rubric as closely or the scoring guide as closely as they should. I limited my contribution because I'm not a music teacher, but I do enjoy being part of this. And I just said, well, to me, since they're breaking down film, the ISMA group, to determine how accurate they believe the judges are based on the performance, as long as they continue to work with the judges to point out some things that they may be missing or may be overemphasizing, it's probably the best they can do. Remembering that we already don't use any Indiana residents for judges at our marching competitions. They're all from other states, mostly Ohio and Texas. So there's already a substantial cost to bring the judges in for these competitions. So they're passionate, dedicated people, and I really appreciate the competitiveness. I sit there as a superintendent, as a former high school administrator, and think sometimes we need to take a deep breath and remember why we started these things in the first place. It was about participation. It was about learning discipline of being in a program such as this, and everyone should certainly continue to strive to be a champion. But I think sometimes we get a little overzealous in wanting to split hairs at the end of the competition. So that was my takeaway. Again, I guess it's a good problem to have, people left smiling and shaking hands. So a healthy discussion was had. I'll leave it at that.
That's good. Any questions or comments?
So the judges for the regional, or do they come in from out of state too, or just for
Just
the
at
final?
Just at the finals.
At the finals down in Indianapolis, at the Dome or wherever.
But some of the judges for the regionals are wherever they can get them, because they have to fill the.
Oh, I'm sure
the
there's
slate.
biases out there. I mean, it's going to happen.
Yeah.
But there's
I-
also different interpretations, and
Yeah.
what pleases you may not please me.
It's just amazing how technical it is with these judges, and like you say, the intricacies of cutting through and knifing through.
No, it's been an eye-opening experience.
That
for
is,
me.
I would have to say, it definitely was.
And then could you imagine trying to judge and critique, like some of the dancing groups that we just.
Well, I think the other thing that I think about when I think about those types of competitions, some of the performances are so different that how do you really rank one over the other, which is what they have to do when they get to the state. They really have to compare. I mean, it's all norm reference. They compare to each other, and some of the performances are so different. It's tricky to
Right.
do.
And that's where your personal preference comes in, right?
True.
Interesting.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So I'm finished my first year as a state board member, and I have 2 more years to do it. And I will tell you that even at the regional meetings, the people who show up, they are into what they do, and our people show up. Our directors are good attendees at the regional. And now we have 2 people on the state committee. We have both Kevin, who has 1 year left, and Kevin Lewis from Grimmer and Elliot Smith just got placed on the board for a 3-year term starting next year.
Very good, thank you.
Which let me say, it speaks well for them that their peers want them on that executive board at the state level.
That's true, very true.
Thank you.
Well, thank you, Dr. Rocco. All right, moving on to our Director of Human Resources, Terry Mucha.
Thank you very much. I would recommend the following appointments, transfers, and resignations be approved. Notice that they also include the teachers for summer school and some of our new teachers coming for next school year.
Yes.
Move to approve.
There's a motion from Mr. Marshall.
Second.
There's a second from Ms. Suze. Any comments or questions regarding our personnel recommendations? No? Hearing none? Okay, let's take a vote on it. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes.
You know,
Thank you.
I guess I do have a question. I'm sorry, I forgot to send this to you earlier, but I'm noticing the Westlake supervisors are being switched to assistant principal positions. But will they still be responsible for the special needs
Especially- Yes,
students?
they will do that,
Okay.
but they will also have the added additional duties that an assistant principal would.
Oh, okay.
Okay, thank you.
Also, I sent in everybody's packet an article from the Times, from AP on vaping and teenagers, and are we rethinking our position on this? I thought it was interesting in light of what we're trying to do here.
Yeah.
And they're beginning to, many of the schools are beginning to think of it as an addiction problem and less of a behavior issue. So they're starting to treat it that way, trying to get our kids away from bad habits that can hurt them for the rest of their lives and help them with prevention and treatment. And it was a really well-done article that talks about the effects of e-cigarettes, and we don't know the effects long-term, and that's what I think is very scary. So many school systems, or some school systems at least, are trying to take a more comprehensive approach and emphasizing prevention and treatment rather than just discipline, and combining them with discipline, of course, at the end. But also, let's think about treating our kids. And so they had a quote here that I thought was interesting from the New York-based Center on Addiction, saying to expect a 13, 14, or 15-year-old to break an addiction by yelling at them or suspending them, it's just not going to happen. They need help, treatment, counseling, support, education, and understanding. So they really feel that just suspension without education is counterproductive for our children.
Yeah.
So I thought, we're ahead of the curve on
Yes,
that
we are.
one.
Yes, we are.
We're doing a good job with understanding that we, as educators, have a responsibility to educate our kids.
Yes.
So today, you approve 2 middle school people and 2 high school people who will be our vaping design. They are meeting with Dr. Bracco and myself tomorrow, and we're going to go over what we would like to see in their program for the kids and what they would like to present to our children. Some of them have already done some research on it. Officer Patrick is going to share what he's done, and I've also had a couple of teachers say that they would be willing to share what they've done also. So we can put together a good program for our kids. We want to maybe a little bit more in depth in the high school than we do in the middle school, but it will be a similar type program for both of them. We want to provide an education that not only talks about the dangers, but also the manipulation that these companies are doing to our kids. And you see even by the article from AP that once the kids understood how they were being manipulated, it made them angry.
Yeah.
And they didn't really want to continue with that after they knew they were being manipulated. So we will have sessions as needed after the curriculum they're going to do this summer. We feel like it's a right direction for our kids because we're acting first as educators, so we should be educating.
Yes, true. Well, my compliments on being proactive on this
Started with
program.
Dr. Baracco,
Yeah.
so I want to thank him for that.
Thank you very much.
So then, they will design the curriculum, and they will offer the class when needed?
When needed,
When
yes,
needed. After school?
after school.
After school. Will it be a requirement or voluntary, or do you know yet?
Well, I think the idea is we want to educate them, so we're offering this as a step before we do anything else. Although at the end, we do want to go over what would happen if they continue.
The rule for the athletes will be that they're still going to get a 1-game or 1 contest suspension, and then they attend the next session, or they're suspended until they attend. So
And for a student that's not an athlete?
it's not really, well, they're going to do it in lieu of suspension then.
Yeah.
So the idea is we don't want to do a consequence. We want you to sit through our lesson
Yeah.
and avoid the other things.
And I think parents will be totally supportive of that.
Oh,
because
yeah.
They're looking for
Oh,
help too.
definitely,
Absolutely.
definitely. Yeah,
Great idea.
yeah, definitely.
Thank you very much. And I also have 1 professional leave request for your approval.
So moved?
There's a motion from Dr. Malkow, and I will second that motion. There are any comments or questions regarding that professional leave request? All right, hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Terry. Moving on to our Director of Primary Education, Teresa Schoen.
Thank you. I just have one item this evening and just wanted to share some information. You should recall that earlier this spring, Sarah and the counselors shared some information on social emotional learning and the training that Lake Central staff has attended. Tonight, I just wanted to give you an update on the additional training we have planned. Just to refresh your memory, a group of us attended the Whole Child Summit, and we've also had Dr. Desautel's here for 5 days of training. Each time she worked with a different group to share the information on neuroscience research and the important part that emotion plays in learning. Dr. Desautel's will be presenting at Hobart High School on June 20th for administrators and June 21st for teachers. And we will have 98 staff members attending those different days of training, one-day training. We've also asked Dr. Desautel's to return to Lake Central in October and in February for 4 more days of training for staff members that have not attended her training before. In the spirit of our Go Slow to Go Fast implementation mantra, at the end of each training, we ask our staff members to just give 1 or 2 of the techniques or activities try in their classroom just to see what effects it has. And I have asked 2 of our teachers to come tonight to share their experience, Elizabeth Kern from Grimmer and Stephanie Serrato from Homan. And so they are just going to briefly share something that they tried and what they saw in their classroom.
Thanks for coming.
Thanks.
So I just wanted to tell you guys that Dr. Lori focuses on attachment and regulation. So attachment is like getting relationships with your kids and making them feel like they are supported and we believe in them. And then regulation is like regulating them when they have anxiety or maybe they're too excited or angry. So just she focuses on attachment and regulation. So with that being said, she does focus attention practices, which help us in the classrooms get them back to where they need to be to get the best out of their day. So a couple of them that I've done the morning meetings, and what it is, it's like a 5-component thing where I have my kids, I'm a kindergarten teacher, I don't know if you heard that, so I let them pick where they get to sit in the morning, which they normally don't get to, just during morning meetings, and so it helps them just build relationships with each other and just feel comfortable with sharing their ideas. So we do a greeting, which they get to decide on themselves. So sometimes they pick a peace sign, or other times an elbow tap. They get to make up their own every time. So we do that, and then we go into a discussion where they talk along with their friends, and then they can share as a group if they like. And then an activity, and then from the activity we do a minute of mindfulness, which has really helped tremendously with just getting them back on task and getting them focused. So what that is, I set my phone to a timer for 1 minute, and everyone sits still, and they can either focus on their breathing, or they can just sit and relax. And during that time, it's just a way to get them back and focused and not worrying about anything else and ready to learn. Another focused attention practice that I really liked was there was a tapping thing. So they do different parts of their body where they tap. And I thought it was more powerful to actually have a 4th grade student come down and teach it to my kids. So he was doing it in his class, and then he was able to come down and teach it to our kids. So not only did it help my students, but it helped him as well, because it was more of like a movement break for him and to make him feel important. So I just cannot stress how important it is that we are doing this and getting our staff involved with Dr. Lori, because it's really helping not only me as a teacher, but my kids and then staff members. So.
Great. That's good to hear.
And I've done a lot of the focused attention practices too, but a lot of the other ones are more like hand gestures. So when I notice that some of the students are getting a little bit off task, or I teach social studies, so after about 10 minutes of maybe note taking, I've noticed that they're kind of wandering a little. So I'll call everyone to stop, and then we do one of the ones where you do a K sign with one hand, and you do no K sign with the other hand, and you find a partner. You have to practice with them, and you're basically like getting your attention back on one person so that you can then put it back to focus on what's going on in the classroom. So then you kind of just do this, and then you go back and you and I've done it kind of a lot. And one of the cool things I thought was some of the kids, the more advanced kids that are a lot more competitive. They came back the next day, they were like, let's go. So they kind of did take that in a little bit, so I thought that was really neat. And I've just been more intentional on conversations with the kids. You know, I thought we had good relationships, but actually spending the time to do one of the ones that she said was a 2x10, so spending 2 minutes 10 times or 10 days in a row with the same kid and just building a relationship like that, and then it just became like, we just came to my desk and then we just chat.
Yeah.
And then the one other thing I thought was really cool, Mr. Castaneda and I worked together and we did a student connection Google form that we created for every kid in our building, minus 8th graders, and we sent it out to the staff. And then right now we're working on, we're going to meet like this week or next week and compile all the data to see what students have connections with staff members. And then the whole idea is we're going to get them together, and if there's a student that doesn't have a connection, to get a staff member out there to them.
Yeah.
So
That's great.
it's been really cool.
That's awesome.
Pretty important.
So, any questions for him?
So does she also promote standing at the door and greeting the students when they come in the morning?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. She
That's-
focused on just getting the relationships.
Yeah, that's so important.
Yeah.
That's the number one indicator of student success.
It's so interesting that the hand gestures bring them back, you know, from where they were at. That's so amazing.
There were some other cool ones too, like standing in a circle and doing a box step and then adding class into it. We did that in class, and it has to make them focus.
Yeah.
It has to.
Yeah.
And then they're.
That's interesting.
And it's funny because we're on opposite ends of the spectrum right
Yeah.
now. We're kindergarten and she's middle school, and we can do the same type of stuff, yet, you know, make it a little bit less for my kids, but more for hers, and we're doing, yeah.
Yeah, and it works for both. You know, whatever level you're at, it works.
Just get some
Yeah. That's
Yes, and it's like that humor, just kind of like, okay, oh, you go ahead.
Yeah, it relieves the stress, and they're back. They're back.
We could have you guys do a bunch of.
It kind of helps us regulate ourselves too.
Probably. Yeah,
Absolutely.
probably. Probably does. Yeah.
But just the mindfulness alone is
Yeah.
really powerful in today's world with all the stressors that are out there.
And if we forget our minute of mindfulness, my kids will remind me.
Oh.
And I say it a lot too. Sometimes I like open my eyes and just peek at them, and they are still. In kindergarten, that a minute feels like a
It's a
lifetime.
great skill to teach.
Pretty amazing.
That's pretty amazing. Yeah. Thank you very much.
Great presentation.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You know, before you go on, I do want to share with the board that for all of the attendees at Hobart this summer, as we've done the last 2 summers, we are purchasing Dr. Lori's latest book for them to read. And believe it or not, I get more compliments for the free books than I do for the food truck.
All right. Well, thank you, Teresa. That's very informative. Thank you very much. All right, moving on to our Director of Secondary Education, Sarah Castaneda. I was going to say Teresa Shaw.
For my first item, I am seeking your approval for the revised professional leave requests that you received.
Move to approve.
Second.
We have a motion from Mr. Marshall and a second from Dr. Malkow. Any comments or questions regarding those professional leave requests? All right. Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes.
Thank you. My other item is to just update you on our administrative professional development week this summer. It's something that we've done actually for the past, 5, 6 years, I think now. And so our schedule starts on Thursday, June 13th. Ready, Northwest Indiana, which is the group that we belong to, that is made up of many of the schools across Northwest Indiana from Lake Porter and LaPorte counties, is having their annual Summer Institute. And so many of our secondary administrators will be attending that at Hobart High School. Some of the topics that they're going to cover is the social emotional learning needs of our students, which we've been talking about with Teresa's portion of this evening. How to identify and address student drug issues, which is going to become much more pressing, in my opinion, as Illinois moves to legalize marijuana along with Michigan. We've already seen a bit of a spike with that. The options that students have for meeting the post-secondary readiness category of graduation pathways, those were the options that involved a lot of testing or coursework and what some schools are doing to help students check off that box. And then also the potential impact of some of our new state laws that are going to be coming down the pipeline. On Friday, June 14th, we're bringing in Eric Evans from Geminis. He's going to speak to our administrative team about the LGBTQ issues that are facing our students and how we as administrators and teachers can better support them in our schools. On Monday, June 17th, we'll have our principals meeting, followed by an afternoon with our 4 technology trainers. They're going to be coming in and discussing district use of Canvas and how we can hopefully increase some of that usage amongst our teachers and also amongst our parents. We're also going to talk a little bit about e-learning. They actually hosted an event recently that had 80 educators from across Northwest Indiana, and it was part of something that the DOE was doing across the state. And so talking about some of the success stories that other school districts have had that have tried e-learning and about how much effort goes into actually planning that and trying it before it's a freak snow day that you're not expecting, and what it needs in order for that to be a successful thing. And then just about the goals that we have for training our staff in technology for next year. On Tuesday, June 18th, we are bringing in Donalyn Miller. If you recall, we had Donalyn come in back in the fall and meet with our elementary and middle school language arts teachers. She authored the book Whisperer, and basically what she talked about was how we can carve out dedicated time for reading, because research shows that that has one of the greatest impacts on academic achievement. And so we want our administrators to get that same information so that way they can look for that in the classrooms and better support carving out that time for our students. This is actually also going to pair up nicely with the fact that we're bringing Donalyn back in August. She's going to be working with our teachers on conferring about reading, also about integration of nonfiction and how to support our students with reading that. And then Wednesday, June 19th, we are doing CPI, which is our Crisis Prevention Intervention Training, for any administrators who need it renewed. And then on Thursday, June 20th, as Teresa mentioned, Dr. DeSatellis will be back at Hobart High School. And so several of our administrators will be attending that. And the first day actually is geared towards counselors as well. And so we've invited them to attend as well. Any questions?
Did you say, may I ask my question?
Yeah, go ahead.
Donalyn Miller, you said it would coming back in August then to work with the teachers?
Yes.
Is that what you said? Now, why am I connecting her with the UNI project? Am I right or wrong on that? The book whisperer?
One of the things that Donalyn talks about is access to books, and so the
Okay.
Uni project actually stemmed from hearing her speak about the fact that some students don't have as good of access to the libraries over the summer and
Okay.
things like that, and so I think that was part of the inspiration for Elena Ahrens to do that project this
And
summer.
do we know how the UNI project is going? Because didn't it kick off?
It did. Friday, they were at Reeder Park at the event they had there, and it was so successful that Elena and Judy Tozik had to go purchase more books. They checked out over 200 books.
Wow.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So it is
Yeah.
very popular.
That's amazing.
So now, will they return those books? I can't remember how it was
So
set
they
up.
can, yes, they will return them, and they can return them when they return to school. That's one option. Or they can visit the UniCart any time. They have a schedule went home with kids with refrigerator magnet, so that it was right there for their parents. They can also return it to the public library, and
Okay,
they will
that's
work with us to, try and get it back to us. But we're hoping that they visit us again and bring it back and check another one out.
Absolutely. Where's their next stop, the UNI? Do you know?
You know, off the top of my head, I don't know,
you-
but
would
it
you-
is tomorrow.
Oh,
But I can't remember. I believe it's Barbary Apartments across from Protzman, but I'm not positive.
okay.
I do have to say that Kim Yelich dressed up as the Big Bad Wolf and was there on Friday night. Very popular. I guess there were many adults that wanted to have their picture taken with her. I said she'd been a fundraiser. She should have charged.
Yeah, she should have.
Oh, that's great.
Okay,
Yeah,
thank you.
we're
That's
very
great.
excited that it is. I knew it'd be popular, but it's really even more popular than I imagined.
Okay.
If you go to our webpage, Dr. Malco, right under that big banner, she's got the summer schedule.
Oh,
The link to
no.
the summer schedule.
I'll have to do that, thank you. So the LGBTQ presentation by Eric from Geminis, is that going to talk about, I mean, it's such a fluid problem that's out there, or it's not a problem, it's just a fluid issue that's out there as to what do we do and how do we treat it, and do we treat it this way, and do they have separate restrooms or do they not? Is that the kind of stuff that Eric will be talking about?
I think what we want him to talk about is to help us become more comfortable with the topic.
The awareness of
The
it.
awareness of it, to make sure we know what is going to best suit our kids who are LGBTQ, and how we can best serve them in a more respectful manner.
And that will start with the principals, and then that'll feed down into the teachers. Okay.
Sarah, it'd be interesting to hear some more conversation with how that conversation comes out about the e-learning piece of it too. That'd be interesting.
It was a really wonderful presentation that they had where the 80 educators came from around Northwest Indiana, because a lot of the school districts who have already tried this talk about how, you know, it needs to be an extension of what they're currently doing in class. It shouldn't be something that's a standalone. It should be with some sort of platform that the student and the teacher is very familiar with using, so that way there aren't as many issues with logging in and access and things like that. And so I think that comfort level is something the tech trainers really took away from that we're going to try to continue to work on. We're fortunate right now that there's the law that says if you're a performance qualified district that you have the ability to waive a couple of days, but if that were to ever go away and we had a nasty winter like we did this year, this is something we might want to start considering down the road.
Yeah, that's why I brought it up, just considering what we had in the way of weather this past winter.
Exactly.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions? Thank you very much. Moving on to our Director of Facilities, Mr. Bill Ledger.
Thank you, Mr. Baxell. I have 4 items tonight, 3 I'll be seeking your approval on. My first one is to seek your approval to award and execute the contract for the Kaler Middle School South Ring Road resurfacing project. This is the final phase of the Kaler project. This is the 3rd year, so this will complete the whole resurfacing there. We had 3 bidders. The low bidder was Site Services for $63,322. So I seek your approval to award that project to them.
So moved.
We have a motion from Mr. Marshall
Second?
and a second from Ms. Hughes. Any comments, questions about the awarding of the South Ring Road resurfacing? All right. Hearing none. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion passes.
Thank you. My next item is to seek your approval to award and execute the contract for the LCSC Transportation Center West Lot and Bus Driver's Lot resurfacing. Again, we had the same 3 bidders. Again, site service was low. The paving prices have significantly gone down from last year, so we are able to do both the west lot as well as the bus driver parking lot, which Christian is very excited about. The contract for that will be $158,121, so I seek your approval to award that to Site Services as well.
So moved.
We have a motion from Dr. Malcolm
Second.
and a second from Mr. Marshall. Any comments or questions regarding the resurfacing? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes.
Thank you. My next item is to seek your approval to award and execute the contract for Grimmer roof replacing at the Shop and Fine Arts Wing, as well as the office and east classroom area of Grimmer. We held a public bid on May 31st. 3 bidders bid to us, Babilla, Corellis, and Gluth Brothers. The low bidder was Gluth Brothers Roofing for $382,934, so I seek your approval to award that to Gluth Brothers Roofing.
Move to approve.
Second?
We have a motion and we have a second. Any comments or questions regarding that re-roofing project?
So this bill will take care of the leaks that we've had over there?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
Okay, good to hear. All right. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes.
Thank you. My next item is an update. If you remember, back in April, we gave approval to Cameron Gosernowski to do his Eagle Scout project at Grimmer Middle School. He basically did some landscape island and some planting of some bushes at the Grimmer Middle School sign. On May 26th, he and some of his volunteers were out there for most of the better part of the day, playing in between the rain, and they did complete the project, and I put some pictures in your board docket, and it looks fantastic. If you haven't driven by, Cameron did a wonderful job on it. So it's all complete now. Mr. Alicia loves it, and it really did an upgrade to the sign. So he did a wonderful job.
I've not driven by it, but your pictures, they did look nice.
Yeah,
So he did
if
do
you
good
get a
job.
chance, drive by, because he did a very nice job.
Sure will.
Yeah, he did a great job. And it's interesting, like those Eagle Scout projects where he's in charge. Like he
Yes,
is the manager.
yes.
He is not supposed to touch really anything. He's supposed to
Right.
give
He
direction
coordinates
and
dri-
coordinate,
He
yeah.
even did the underground locates. I mean, he did everything.
Oh, he did the underground
Oh,
locates
yeah,
too.
he called for that. He did it, yes.
Wow.
He
okay.
he kept Mr. Alicia and I apprised of his schedule, and he did a wonderful job.
Wow, that's an amazing job. Yeah, just amazing. Yeah, pass that along for
I
the
will
board.
definitely do that.
Definitely. Great.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Bill. And Mr. Rob James is not here this evening, so I'm assuming.
Skip
You, Mr.
Oh,
Marino
Mr. Rick,
here.
Mr. Rick, sorry. Sorry.
My only item is to seek your approval for the professional leave requests that were included in your packet.
So moved.
Okay, we have a motion from Mr. Marshall, and I will second that because I was lax. So, any comments or questions regarding those professional leave requests? All right, hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Sorry about that, Rick.
Thank you.
Moving on to our Director of Business Services, Rob James, and I'm assuming
I am going to handle that for Mr. James.
Mr. Ledger's going to take that as well.
He's attending his son's Lake Central Regional Championship game tonight, so
So do we
they
know
got
the
beat
score?
2-0, unfortunately.
They got B?
Yes, 2-0.
Oh,
All right.
okay.
So,
Thank
but
you.
I'll try to make him happy going through his board packet. So he has 6 items, 5 I'll be seeking your approval on. Back in April, the board awarded Food to School Cooperative to do all the food service bidding for Lake Center during the school year. So that being said, the first item is to seek your approval, the HPS Group Purchasing Organizing Distributor Award Letter. The Food to School Cooperative has completed the process for the 2019-2020 Group Purchasing Organization distribution for grocery items. HPS was a low bidder for our school corporation. We now, excuse me, we now need to locally approve HPS as our group purchasing organization along with Gordon Food Service as distributor for the 2019-2020 school year. So I'll seek your approval on that.
Move to approve.
We have a motion from Ms. Suze.
Second.
We have a second from Dr. Malkow. Any comments or questions regarding the group purchasing agreement? All right, hearing none. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion passes.
Thank you. The next item for your approval is Pleasant View Dairy. Again, the Food to School Cooperative has completed the process for the 1920 dairy bids. Pleasant View Dairy was the lowest bidder for our school corporation. We now need to locally approve Pleasant View Dairy as our dairy provider for the 1920 school year. So I seek your approval on that as well.
So moved.
We have a motion from Mr. Marshall.
Second.
We have a second from Ms. Suze. Just beat you there by a second.
That's okay, she's younger than me.
Okay, any comments or questions regarding the Pleasant View Dairy Award? Okay, hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes.
My next item is approval on the Alpha Baking Company. Again, the Food to School Cooperative has completed the process for 1920 bakery bids. Alpha Baking Company was the lowest bidder for our school corporation. We now need to approve Alpha Baking Company as our bakery provider for the 1920 school year. I seek your approval on Alpha Baking Company.
So
Also moved to approve.
Oh, wait, Dr. Malco with the motion, a second from Mr. Marshall. All right, any comments or questions regarding the Alpha Baking Company Award? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes.
My next item for Rob is he's requesting professional leave to attend the Indiana Department of Education's 2019 Office of School Finance Budget Workshop on June 26th in Indianapolis.
So moved.
A motion from Dr. Malco,
Second.
and there was a second from Ms. Suze. Any comments or questions regarding the professional leave request? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes.
The last action item for Rob is to seek your approval on the donations as submitted in your board packet.
Move to approve.
The motion from Ms. Suze, and I will second that motion. Any comments or questions regarding the donations in your board packet? All right, hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes.
Thank you. Rob's last item is he wanted to just give the board a little GO bond update. Standard & Poor's has affirmed that the Lake Central School Corporation's underlying debt rating of A and state program rating of AA+ for our GO bonds. This is very good news for the Lake Central School Corporation and helped us secure good interest rates in the marketplace. You should have a copy of the S&P report at your station. And on May 29th, they conducted a bond sale. There was a total of 9 bidders for our bonds. That's a lot. They viewed Lake Central as a very good corporation. They range from 1.832 to 2.413. Piper Jaffray, a financial investment firm out of Minnesota, was the low bidder at 1.832 net interest rate. We are scheduled to close on June 12th.
That's great to hear.
Yeah, 1.8 was very good.
1.8 is a great rate.
Yes.
That is wonderful. I guess, you know, with our A+ rating and our AA+ rating, we can secure, you know, that little type of financing there.
And 9 bidders, too. I mean,
Yeah.
that's-
That's great. That's good to hear. Thank you very much.
That's all for Mr. James.
Okay. I don't think we have any public comments this evening. So I'll move on to board comments and consideration of future agenda items. And I'll start with Mr. Marshall.
Just a very short comment. I want to compliment everybody involved in the organizational and performance of graduation last night. It was outstanding, as usual. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Dr. Malcolm?
You know, I agree with what Mr. Marshall said. It was a great experience, and Olivia's speech just touched so many hearts, and may we always remember her message and how important that is in our world that we live. I wanted to recognize that we received these nice certificates from the Lake Central History Club because of our support of the Veterans Day programs, and that is very much appreciated. Also, I don't know what school corporation it was, but there was a high school that decided to make phones not accessible in the classrooms. They had to put the phones away. Do you remember? Was it Hobart?
I haven't heard.
No, this was a year ago.
A lot of them have tried various types of trying to keep phones under control. I'm not sure I remember which one banned them completely.
Yeah, it was a school that banned. I was just wondering how successful it was, or maybe wasn't. I was just curious if you knew.
Did you say it was high school or?
It was a high school, and I remember reading it in the paper that they were banning phones, and I thought, I wonder if that's going to work out or not. Just because as we talk about the addictions and, you know, just carrying over the addiction that so many children have to phones.
It sounds like some of the students in the high school use those as their personal devices, right?
I know.
I believe so.
Research and so.
Oh, I know. You know, it's not a clean situation. I was just wondering how that did turn out, if they were successful with that, so.
We'll be meeting at the end of June, so I'll ask whoever is in attendance if any of the superintendents know who that was.
Yeah, it was either Hobart, or what's the school beside Hobart? Just
I'm pretty sure it's
further
not Hobart.
east? Okay, east of Hobart.
Portage?
Portage.
River Forest?
River Forest?
I think it was Portage.
Was Portage?
I think it was Portage. But I think it was just done at the high school. Was that right? I'm thinking it was Portage also. But yeah, I'd be curious to know how it went over and if it succeeded or not.
It's a good homework assignment, figuring out what.
Yeah.
Anything else?
No, that was it. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Ms. Suze?
Just a lot of positive feedback from the community about the graduation ceremony yesterday. So thank you to all that planned and participated.
Yeah,
Thank you.
I couldn't add anything more to that because the graduation was amazing. It's a little, I guess it's a little exhausting shaking 791 hands. You don't realize it till you get.
Is that the number, Tom?
I think it was 791. I'm not positive.
That's
what it was.
791. So it was one of our bigger crowds coming across the stage. But you know, it's every year. I anticipate graduation because I just like to see the smiles. Everybody coming across the stage, smiles, firm handshakes, and they're just very gracious. So
A lot of smiles.
I was glad to see that. All right, moving on to Dr. Rocco.
So we're back here in 2 weeks, June 17th, for our next board gathering. On Wednesday evening, we have the athletic spring banquet, which starts with a dinner at 6 o'clock, and then they meet in the auditorium for 30 minutes of a quick review, and then they break out into teams. So make the board aware of that. Tomorrow evening, also, Louise and her group is having a special recognition at 5:30 in the town square for those students who were out in the field getting real-life experience in the workforce.
Oh, that's great to hear. Great. Well, thank you very much. And I am looking for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
We have a motion from Dr. Malcolm,
Second?
a second from Ms. Seuss. All those in favor?
Aye.
We are adjourned.